I'm Robin. I'm speaking to you from just outside Nairobi in Kenya. It is 10 past midnight here. I can't quite beat Richard there for the antisocial time difference. Thank you for staying up. I'm going to speak to you with two of my colleagues about three things. So viper conservation, a bit about reptile photography, and about an upcoming herping trip to Kenya, which we have in the calendar for next year. Yeah, so this is the my plan for the talk here. I'll introduce the team, talk about our conservation work, talk a bit about photographing reptiles and amphibians, a big part of my life and the tools that we offer. I will also talk to you about why you might consider coming to Kenya and coming on a herping trip to a country that you've possibly already been to, possibly know a bit about, or quite a bit about, perhaps don't realize that it is arguably one of the best countries for herping. And then I'll go through the itinerary for the tour that we have planned. So just some quick introductions. So that's me on the right there. This is the three of us, the team over here in Kenya. This is in the Nithi Falls, one of the amazing waterfalls up on the moorlands of Mount Kenya. So who am I? So I'm Robin. I live in Kenya. I'm from Chester in the UK originally. I've lived overseas for on and off about the last 6 or 7 years. I am a qualified guide like Richard. I also trained in South Africa with the Field Guides Association of Southern Africa. I'm also a Kenya professional safari guide too. I'm a UK mountain leader. I am a semi-professional photographer, so I don't work full-time as a photographer. I do it in as much time as I can. My photographs are quite widely used in field guides now, some magazine articles, online articles, and I also produce a lot of my own educational resources using them. I'm actually a full-time biology teacher. I've been teaching for 15 years. As well as that, my connection to the reptile world is about 5 years ago. When I lived in Bali in Southeast Asia, I started as a snake rescuer for an organization called Bali Reptile Rescue. And from there, kind of was in at the deep end with rescuing snakes. And then I brought that over here as well, where I was the first person in my local area to even entertain the notion of rescuing snakes. I've been doing that for quite a while now. It keeps me quite busy. I think I'm on 30 spitting cobras in the last 2 years now, just in my local area. 3 of those were actually in my own garden here. And since then, I've trained with the African Snakebite Institute down in South Africa to get myself certified as a snake rescuer. I'll pass over to my colleagues, Myrta and Dixon, who'll introduce themselves now as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dixon Katana. I'm a Kenyan. I grew up in snake life. This also comes up from my background. My father was a snake handler too. I've been all over the country, all over Kenya, looking for endemic species, even the non-endemic species, which are very common in Kenya. Very passionate to find them in the wild. So I'm very happy if someone comes in Kenya, love to see snake, the man to go help to see the Kenyan snakes.
Good, and I am Michte. I'm originally from the Netherlands, hence my very Dutch name. So feel free to call me M, as many of my friends do. I'm in East Africa for about 10 years now, and my Kenyan snake story started in 2021 when I started to look for one of Kenyan's endemics, the Kenya horned viper, in the Rift Valley of Kenya. It hasn't been easy. It's been quite the search. We've been successful so far, and I couldn't have done it with Robin and Dixon here. So I think we are quite the team. And yeah, when Dan contacted us about doing herping tours in Kenya, we jumped at the opportunity to use tourism as a tool for conservation, because I think I can speak for the three of us that conservation of reptiles and amphibians is our main goal and common goal, aim. So yeah, I'm very excited that Robin is going to tell you all about what we can offer you, and we hope to welcome you in Kenya soon.
Sure.
Fantastic, thank you both. So yeah, as Myrta said there, conservation is really what we're all about. We are a conservation organization. Kenya has 147 recorded species. That number may increase with further research, but we're mostly focused on the 3 that you can see before you. So these are the 3 endemic species of vipers that are only found in Kenya. We're focused at the moment on the one in the middle and the one on the right there. These are the most endangered. These 2 species are also on a list published by what's called the EDGE program by the Zoological Society of London. So we're very fortunate just within the last year to actually receive a generous scholarship from them to conduct some much needed research into the actual distribution, population, and also the ecology of those 2 species, which are considered to be evolutionarily distinct and genetically and globally endangered. That's what the EDGE stands for. A little bit about them. The one on the left there is the Kenya montane viper. This is only found in, it's only known to be found in 2 areas of very high altitude moorland on Mount Kenya, the 2nd highest mountain in Africa, and also in the nearby Aberdares range. It's a very interesting species. It's a terrestrial species of viper. It is adapted to an incredibly hostile environment where at nighttime the temperatures regularly drop below 0. It's actually the least endangered of the 3 because it lives entirely within protected areas, which it has a really good bonus for it, to be honest. It's also not desired as a pet because it is debatably not as attractive as the middle and the right species. So these 2 have a very particular conservation problem, which is that they are very popular pets. So all of the bush vipers, you can see for yourself, it's a beautiful species. And unfortunately for many people, they see that and they just think, I want one. So it is, unfortunately, it has historically been quite widely poached out of the country and smuggled to the Western world primarily, where it does reach, unfortunately, high prices. So that's one of the major risks facing the Mount Kenya bush viper. It is also under huge threat from habitat loss. It only exists in particular kinds of forest on the eastern side of Mount Kenya. And those areas are not well protected. The Kenya horn viper, this is Merta's personal favorite. This is found in her nearby area of the Rift Valley in Kenya, heading a bit further north from Naivasha, where she's based. Again, it's a desirable pet for some people. And unfortunately as well, this species lives in land that is also prime agricultural land. So its habitat has been hugely carved up into small plots. It's very busy with livestock and lots of people. So there's a multitude of threats facing that one. So we're doing research, starting with surveys, trying to find out, are they still where we thought they were? How are they doing? What are their populations like? And then just any useful bits of ecology that we can find along the way. Okay, so talking about photography now, all the pictures in this slideshow are my own. I spend basically all of my time photographing, well, all wildlife. I do consider myself an all-round naturalist, actually, but reptiles have taken a particular interest. The reason I'm talking about this is that our tours will have an emphasis on photography. I will be helping people learn how to take reptile and amphibian photographs. So it's a fairly niche skill. It's not a particularly easy skill that you can pick up out of a book. In fact, I'm not aware of any books that really go into the basics of it. The technical side of it is not hugely complicated. It's essentially just a specialized form of macro photography. But the big thing, as all the speakers tonight will testify as well, the real key to photographing reptiles and amphibians well is understanding the species, and that's something that we can really offer. So we know where to find the species, and we know how to photograph them as well, and very ethically too. So for those of you who would like to book onto the trip, one thing that we will do is in advance of the trip, we can have a discussion about what kind of equipment would be necessary. Make sure you arrive with the right gear. As I say, it is generally macro photography, but you might find that the equipment that you would bring on a reptile focused trip might be different to what you'd expect to bring on a general safari trip. I think this was actually covered. Richard mentioned this when he was speaking about the vipers in Japan. One of the questions we already get it quite a bit from clients and just general inquiries is about how you can photograph these animals safely. This is a highly venomous eastern green mamba, which is found in Kenya on the coast. It's actually one of 3 mamba species we have in Kenya. We also have the black mamba, and we have the Jameson's mamba in the far west as well. So what I would maybe admit at this stage is, you know, there's more to this scene than you can see in the photo. So if I just move on, you'll see the same scene, just slightly recomposed, and you will see just out of shot there is Ferry himself on hand. So exactly as Richard said, there obviously is an element of danger. This is a snake with a potent neurotoxin. We do everything very, very safely. One of Ferry's particular strengths is kind of managing the safety element of the scene. You know, he will tell me if I'm getting too close. He will be monitoring the behavior of the snake. And we have never had an incident. We've never even had anything close to an incident. So just rest assured that whatever we see, however we want to photograph it, everything will be done with safety as a priority. Very quickly, just some of the subjects and maybe a little bit about photography. Possibly some of you might have seen that green mamba and thought, that's a bit scary. That's, you know, not the first reptile I want to photograph. Nobody would ever throw anybody in the deep end with a green mamba as their first subject. It's taken me a long time to build up to the stage where I can produce that kind of that photo. So what we'll do in the trip is we will encounter a huge range of subjects. This is a relatively common chameleon species here. This was actually in my garden a few months ago. Chameleons are, you might be surprised to hear, they're actually relatively easy to find, particularly at night time. But Ferry has the keenest eyes I've ever seen. We found a side-striped chameleon just outside of Nairobi on Saturday, and I don't know how he saw it. He's excellent at spotting these things. And they're a really good subject just to start with, to kind of get your eye in and make sure your camera's set up. You know, they are not, contrary to popular belief over in this region, they are entirely harmless and not dangerous in any capacity. And they're relatively slow moving as well. So a good starter subject. Not all amphibians are easy. We have things called rocket frogs that are named for a reason. They're very fast, but things like the tree frogs, this is a Mackay's tree frog from Kakamega in Western Kenya, got a nice easy subject to start with. Moving up to things like non-venomous species of snakes. This is one of the relatively common species on the coast. This genus, Philothamnus, is quite widespread in the region. And across the tour, we'll probably see multiple species. It's non-venomous. It is often mistaken for a green mamba. It is not a green mamba. It's non-venomous, but I call it a moderate subject because they're quite fast-moving. But yeah, no danger at all. And then a very different example here. This is a puff adder, one of the most widespread vipers in the region, as well as across much of Africa. It's a highly venomous species. It has a very strong cytotoxic venom, but they are usually quite slow moving. Many vipers, they do sit quite still. So again, with the scene carefully managed by our team, particularly Ferry, ensuring that we don't get too safe. If they do strike, they are incredibly fast, but we'd always make sure we're a safe distance away. And therefore, you know, as long as you're well away from that sort of critical zone, then the danger level is very low. And then hopefully over the course of the trip, we will probably encounter what I would consider fairly advanced subjects. So this is the famous black mamba, named because the inside of its mouth is black. It is not a black snake. Very large snake, very, very fast moving. This photograph was taken with a 300mm lens, so I was a very safe distance away from it. This is a boom slang. The proper pronunciation in Afrikaans is boomslang, which means tree snake. Quite widespread in Kenya. One of the places we visit is the Savo ecosystem, where we've had a huge amount of success. I think our record so far was finding 7 individuals in one afternoon. This was taken with a technique I like to think that I've patented. It is taken with a wide angle lens. The camera was quite close to the snake. No part of my body was anywhere close to it. I have a secret technique which will be shared on the tour, but there's absolutely no danger to me there. One of the many spitting cobras rescued from our local area. This is the black-necked spitting cobra, one of 3 spitting cobras that we have in the country. We also have the Ashes spitting cobra and the red spitting cobra, and we have a chance of seeing all 3 potentially on the tour. Spitting cobras, as the name suggests, they do spit their venom, so that does introduce the safety element of wearing goggles, and these are things that we always bring with us. So again, a fairly advanced species, but you know, with the correct management, you'll be able to produce photos like this. I mentioned earlier on that I use my photos for education work. So this is, I put it on here just to show that, but also just to illustrate the enormous diversity. So this is just 54 of the 147 species in Kenya. This is one of the posters I produced just to really to celebrate it. I didn't intend it to be anything about the venom, but people kept asking me, can you please tell us which ones are venomous? But I just like just to show off the beauty of these animals. And I live outside a city, and this is most of the herpetofauna of the Nairobi area. It is missing 2 snake species that I have yet to photograph, but you can see again just an illustration of the amazing diversity that we've got here. And this is just in the city, never mind the country at large. So why would you consider coming to Kenya? Lots of reasons, I think. I'm sure many of you have already been or know about the country. Famous for its mammals, and something that Dan said early on, mammals and many other forms of wildlife, they're quite common bycatch. So this is a picture taken from the same area, the Tsavo ecosystem. There's a basa oryx and some elephants, the famous tuskers of the Tsavo ecosystem, which was seen on a herping tour. We didn't target them, they're just there. The same ecosystem, one thing you might spot with most of these is the very kind of what appears to be a strange color scheme. The Tsavo area has this very distinctive red soil, which is visible in most of those photos. I honestly can't think of many places in the world where you can be in one spot and you can see such diversity. I really had to curate this page to remove a few things, but not only the herpetofauna, but many other things as well. That's one of the, in the bottom left there, that's one of the famous or infamous Tsavo lions. The males have very short manes. Bird life is fantastic as well. Being on the ground and being on foot, we're there seeing all the, the small things, the herpetofauna, the arthropods. We also get great sightings of the birds, and we also get great sightings of the mammals as well. So you see everything. It really has everything to offer. Coupled with that then is an enormous diversity of habitats. This is really only scratching the surface of the different habitats in the country. And many of these we visit on the tour. Something which I think is really, really special about this country is on almost every trip, we find something new. This was a species of snake that me and some friends found a couple of years ago. It's never been recorded in Kenya until we were there. We were the first ones to see it. We were just walking in Kakamega Forest, 5 minutes into our trek, and there it was. We saw this thing, and it's not the kind of snake that necessarily catches your eye, but it was sent to an expert. I think actually the expert, Stephen Spalls, might be in the audience. So hi, Stephen, if you're there. And he was very quick to ID it for us and tell us what it was and that it was a new record for the country. And this is really, really common. Perhaps not adding new species like that, but I think it was one of the previous speakers mentioned about how it's quite common that we contribute to range extensions, often finding things in places where they, were perhaps believed to exist, but there've been no documented evidence. Our trips are finding lots of these things. So here's an outline of the tour. This is taken from the Naturetrek website. Again, any specific details, the best thing to do is probably either speak straight to Dan or have a look on the website at the details of the tour. We've got lots of things on there, many of these photos as well. This is the itinerary. You'll see it is pretty much a transect of the whole country, starting off in Nairobi, moving on to the great tropical rainforest of Kakamega, transiting to Mount Kenya via a stopover in Nakuru. That might be a place you've perhaps already been if you've been here on a safari holiday. Time in Mount Kenya, then heading on over to the Tsavo ecosystem and then onto the coast and then flying back by a domestic flight to Nairobi. Nairobi, I showed you that poster before. It's got amazing diversity, even in the suburbs. This Jackson's chameleon, the one with the 3 horns there, is really easy to find in the right sort of parts of the more wooded parts of the city. Top left, there's a Battersby's green snake that was found in my garden. Bottom left, the garter snake, one of the rescues I did from my place of work, and a brown house snake there at the bottom. These are, well, garter snake's a bit tricky, but the other 3 are relatively easy to find even within the city, just in a few hours walking around a leafy place. Then one of the highlights will be a visit. You saw this photo earlier on Dan's slides. This is the green or variable bush viper, one of 3 bush vipers that we have in Kenya. The other one is the rough-scaled bush viper, which is also known from Western Kenya. So we'll be looking out for that too. And the Mount Kenya bush viper in the Mount Kenya forests. One of the highlights of a trip to Kakamega there. Also be looking for specifically 2 of the Bitis genera, the large African vipers. So this on the top left here is Bitis nasicornis, which is the rhinoceros viper. That's a beautiful, vivid juvenile that we found in Kakamega. Good chameleon diversity. The bottom left there is a Bullinger's pygmy chameleon. It's a relatively small species, as the name suggests. Beautiful and very odd-looking thing. Montane side-striped chameleon just above it there. Bush viper, the same tree frog from before. And again, in terms of bycatch, we stay in this fantastic sort of colonial-esque cottage in the forest called the Rondo Retreat. That on the left there is a juvenile crowned eagle, which I saw. It's got a nest in the grounds there. And the bottom right is a Stuhlmann's blue monkey, also found in the grounds. Heading over to Mount Kenya, we do a night stop in the Lake Nakuru area, famous for its flamingos. This is a stopover. It's doesn't have such a herpetological focus. In national parks, you are restricted to being in vehicles. So this would be a day safari, looking for things like the wide-lipped or white or greys rhinoceros, the one at the bottom there. Very easy to find. In Nakuru, there's really sort of 3 places in Kenya where they're very easy to find, and elsewhere in the country, like much of Africa, they're very hard to find, but they're very easy to view, usually on the shores of the lake. There's also the black or hook-clipped rhinoceros too. My thumbnail thing is obscuring the right of my screen, but I think it's the grey-crowned crane on the right, one of the most amazing distinctive birds we have. On the left there, this is what formerly was called a Rothschild's giraffe, now classified as a Nubian giraffe. They've reclassified giraffes into 4 species. Very endangered giraffe, which is again quite easy to view in Nakuru. When we stay overnight, we stay in a place called Kembu Cottages, which is actually just outside of Nakuru in a town called Njoro. And it's famous for these chameleons, which is the von Honel's or high-casked chameleon. And what's special about the ones that are found there is they're incredibly colorful. This is just one of, I think I found about 8 or so on that night, and every one had this most amazing color scheme. Then we're going to head over to Mount Kenya. We are focusing on the moorlands of Mount Kenya on the eastern side around if you've ever, some of you might have climbed Mount Kenya if you've done the Chogoria route. It's those moorlands that most people just walk through and don't realize just how much wonderful wildlife there is. So this is the Mount Kenya side-striped chameleon. It's an endemic species only found up there in the sort of alpine meadow landscape. Also got lots of other species of reptile, some of them quite colorful on the left here. This is the alpine meadow skink, very colorful. Bottom left is the Kenya montane viper. That will be our focus for that part of the trip. Bottom middle there is another von Honel's chameleon, a different color scheme. The ones on Mount Kenya tend to be yellow with a black eye turret. You can see just about in the background the summit of Mount Kenya. Spectacular views, certainly in the mornings when it's usually very clear. And then Tsavo, I've already mentioned Tsavo, so just a quick thing there. A couple of the other things we might see. Kenya sand boa down the bottom middle is a real highlight for many people, a very beautiful species. Nile crocodiles can be quite easily viewed on the rivers. Bottom left there, a bit of bycatch. This is the Gerenuk, one of my favorite antelopes. The boom slangs, this is just a bit of a showcase of the variety. So 4 of these were photographed within a 100-meter radius in a particular place in Tsavo. So it's not just a case of you see one and you move on. There's it's like Pokemon, you've got to catch them all. There's a lot of different species to observe. My favorite is the top left one. They call this the Kanga phase. Boomslang kanga is a local term for the guinea fowl that have the same kind of black and white spots. And then our final destination is the Kenya coast. It's a fantastic place for herping. This is a white-throated Savannah monitor photographed on the island on which Ferry was born, called Karepwe, and you can see a little bit of the habitat in the background there. You can see how it actually, I'm amazed that the people there are very happy to live with these snakes. I think Ferry did a lot of good work there in the past, getting everyone to be pro-snake. More diversity, I've already mentioned, that's a speckled green snake at the bottom middle, another monitor. Top middle is what is debatably, I better say this with the caveat, especially with Stephen listening in, debatably the fastest snake in the world, which is not the green mamba. This is the speckled sand snake. Sand snakes are very, very fast. This is a beautiful species. We found them quite regularly on the coast. They're found elsewhere in Kenya too. The bottom left there, one of my favorite lizards, the great plated lizard. These are very confiding. In fact, usually in the grounds of the hotels in the town that we stay, which is called Butamu, they're usually just milling around and very easy to see. That's the Turtle Bay Resort in the bottom right where we stay. So a bit like what Richard was saying about the Japanese tour. It's not all about slogging through the jungle. There is time for relaxation as well. More bycatch. I think the bycatch is pretty fantastic, particularly in this place. So one of the forests that we will at least spend a morning is the Arabuko Sokoke forest. Again, you may have seen it if you've been to Kenya before. It's the sort of last vestiges of coastal forest. It's a hot spot for endemism, and this is the golden rump sengi or elephant shrew, a fantastic species. Sokoke scops owls, very, very cute things, often sat in pairs like that. All right, that's me done. I guess we'll probably go over to the chat at the end for any questions. So thank you for listening, and hopefully we'll see you next year on the Kenya tour.